certain restrictions related to agriculture. But US and Europe have themselves protected their agricultural market and grandfathered the benefits they have through the WTO and GATT. So, so they take certain advantages. The US, even if it tries to normalize the relationship with China, even if it does a trade deal with China, sees that its main economic, technological, and military competition is with China. Now, to deal with that competition, US leaders, US companies, and I've heard that from them, believe that India will be an important partner.
Hello, you are watching India Today Global. I am Pranay Upadhyay. India now faces the extended and increased 50% tariff for Indian export to US market for many goods. And this is unprecedented, especially in terms of India-US relation. What is the general trajectory of India-US relation? What President Donald Trump is doing and why is he treating India like this? To discuss all these issues, I am being joined by Ambassador Arun Kumar Singh, who has served as India's ambassador in Washington, D.C., and he is considered as an ace expert on India-US relations. So welcome to India Today Global.
Thank you. Delighted to be with you.
Thank you very much, sir. And my first question to you would be, why US President Donald Trump is doing so? Why is he being hard on India and a strategic partner like India?
So, of course, what he's doing now in terms of tariffs and imposing it on different countries is part of the politics that he had defined when he was doing his election campaign is in 2016. Even in his earlier writings, before he really became a candidate for president, he has been saying that because of the kind of trade policies US had followed, manufacturing had been sucked away from the United States, and that there was a need for US to change its policies. Even in his first term, he tried to impose higher tariffs on China because, China, there's a huge concentration of global manufacturing in China. 18% of GDP is in China, global GDP, but 32% of manufacturing value added in China. So that has been policy. So when he came back in his second term, even more than in his first term, he has been saying that he needs to bring manufacturing back to the United States and address the issue of US trade deficit, and that he needs to levy higher tariffs on all partners of the US. Now, India realized, I think, early on where Trump was headed, and from all reports, India moved quickly to get into a multi-sectoral free trade agreement discussion with the US. And this was started in February. From all reports, it had progressed well. There were 5 rounds of in-person discussions, several rounds of virtual discussions, and a balanced, fair, multi-sectoral trade agreement had been worked out between the two negotiators. And also, from all reports, India had been much more forward-leaning in these negotiations than in any other free trade agreement. And India's approach has changed. India has recently done a free trade agreement with the UK. Earlier, it had done with UAE, with Australia. So there was an expectation that this will work out. But what was happening in the meantime was because of pressure from Donald Trump, many of the other trading partners of the US were caving in. For example, Trump projected that Indonesia and Vietnam have completely opened up their markets and have said there will be zero tariff on US product, and yet he was levying 20% tariff on them. Similarly, on Japan and the European Union, he has levied 15% tariff, and they have committed to invest in the US. Japan has committed to invest $500 billion in the US. Europe has said that they will invest $600 billion in the US, and that they will buy $750 billion worth of energy from the US. So all the other partners of the US were caving in, coming under pressure, and making the kind of commitments that was very unusual. So given that, the agreement with India, which was balanced, benefits for both sides, is something that Donald Trump was not able to sell domestically, that the Indians completely opened up and I still levied tariff on them. And so he could not project an unilateral gain. That was as a result of that, as I understand it from the reports, that he didn't accept that. Now, that may have worked for his own domestic politics. But as a result, what he has done is there is a penalty, I would say, that has really been imposed on US-India relations, not so much on India. Because going ahead, at some stage we'll come out of this difficult situation. But people will remember that US was once again seen as an unreliable and coercive partner with the kind of policies it followed.
So what we can make out from President Donald Trump's approach here is that he's asking for three big things. One, you should give some big ticket announcement, some big ticket purchase, make some big announcement of investment, and also he wanted to show his audience that everyone bows down before US president. Is it more of rhetoric, or is there a reason behind this approach with especially the strategic partner of United States?
So look, I think whatever may work for President Trump in his own domestic context, he has to recognize that other leaders also have their own political compulsions. Other countries have their own sense of self-image, and therefore he cannot treat each country the same way. And so it's important. And I think India, given our own history, civilization, we have a certain sense of what India is all about. And India is also a developing country. Therefore, to expect from India what Japan may have done, what Europe may have done, I don't think it's a reasonable expectation. So ultimately, I think what will work for people in India is to have something that is seen as fair and balanced. And I think for the US also, if they are looking at the long term, it is important that the Indian people see them as a useful partner and not one that just pressurizes, because then there'll be a greater anti-US sentiment in India. And that doesn't work for the US. So I think they need to factor that in.
You're absolutely right, Ambassador Singh, and people still recall the 1971, the way US played a role during 1971. People like you have, contributed a lot to build this relationship over the years, but now again we are at this crossroad. But coming back to this point, if we play devil's advocate, President Donald Trump and US and Trump administration says that India is tariff Maharaja. Yes, it is a fact that we have very high tariffs. People like you who have defended, who have worked on these trade negotiations, how would you defend and how would you, justify the high tariff rates before a US administration?
So, the tariffs that India has are those that have been worked out through the WTO negotiations. And it are very much in line with India's multilateral commitments. It is not something that India has done unilaterally. So, when the US wants to do something, they build a narrative around that. So they have created a certain narrative about where India's tariffs are. They may be higher than the tariffs that the US does, but US is a highly developed economy and highly developed market. Look at their per capita income, more than $60,000-$70,000. Our per capita income is in the range of $2,000, $3,000. So there is no comparison. So given the fact that India is a developing country, the kind of constraints we have with the large number of people living in living off agriculture, is subsistence agriculture. So given all that, to expect from India, the kind of policies that developed countries have, is not a reasonable expectation. And they have to understand that. Even if you look at agriculture, they criticize India for certain restrictions related to agriculture. But US and Europe have themselves protected their agriculture market and grandfathered the benefits they have through the WTO and GATT. So, so they take certain advantages and they say, okay, we have established this as per earlier norms. But when developing countries take measures to protect their own very important sectors, then they come down heavy against that. So it's a question of building a narrative, trying to justify what works in your interest. And as I said, India's tariffs are quite in keeping with the multilateral commitments India has made.
You're absolutely right, Ambassador Singh. India is only fulfilling the international commitment, and President Donald Trump and US is not respecting the global commitments they have given. They have started the GATT process or the WTO process, and in fact, they were the one who brought China into the WTO. But you comes with a unique experience of having dealt with Pakistan as well. What has changed President Donald Trump's approach towards Pakistan? This was surprising for many people because he was the one who has tweeted in January 2018 saying that Pakistan betrayed United States. They got billions of dollars and did nothing on count of terrorism. But now he is dealing with Pakistan military, and probably it was the only instance where he invited a Pakistani general for a lunch.
So look, each country builds relationship with another country based on perception of their interests. So Donald Trump took a hard line to Pakistan in his first term, not because he wanted to please India, but he took a hard line because he felt that, and as he said, Pakistan was hoodwinking the United States, taking a lot of assistance from the US and supporting the Taliban who were killing US soldiers. So he wanted to generate pressure on Pakistan. But at the same time, by 2019, when Donald Trump wanted to do an agreement with the Taliban, he felt that he needed help from Pakistan to get an agreement with the Taliban. So then he started wooing Pakistan. And you might remember that in July 2019, he invited Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan to the White House. Yes. And there, in response to a planted question, he said that he was ready to mediate on Kashmir. And he went on to say that the Indian Prime Minister had asked him to mediate on Kashmir. Now, that was simply not true. And the Indian Foreign Minister had to make a statement in Parliament that there's no truth to what the President had said.
Not only that, Ambassador Singh, following that meeting in Biarritz during the G7, when Prime Minister Narendra Modi met President Donald Trump, he said, "No, thank you," in as many words.
So, so that's something. But US finds Pakistan, despite everything, despite all the negative elements, as an important partner, because Pakistan is a country with large number of nuclear weapons. US would want to have access to the leadership of a country that has large number of nuclear weapons. Secondly, they still believe that Pakistan is useful for them for some counterterrorism cooperation. If they want to fly over drones over Afghanistan for counterterrorism purposes, it has to overfly Pakistani territory, and they need approval of the Pakistani establishment. If you remember in March, in the speech that he gave to the joint session of Congress, President Trump specifically mentioned one person who had been caught by Pakistan, handed over to the US, who was believed to have involved the killing of American soldiers in August when the US troops were withdrawing. So for these purposes, for their own reasons, they see Pakistan as an important country to deal with. So when their interest is served, they will deal with them. So right now, from all reports, there is a certain interest they see in Pakistan because Pakistan has invested in the cryptocurrency firm that is run by Donald Trump's son, Eric Trump, and a partner of theirs, who is the son of Steve Witkoff, the special envoy of President Trump. They have offered investments to US in critical minerals, maybe in the oil sector. So for various reasons, they see that, yes, it's a useful relationship for them, so they will do that. So I don't think we should get too excited if there are difficulties in their relations. We shouldn't get too worried if they are having the positive aspect to their relationship. It's something that they will determine based on their own interests. It will go up and down over time.
In your assessment, is his own interest, his own business interest prevailing over the US strategic interest?
Well, that assessment we cannot make, but ultimately, I think there's certainly also a strategic aspect to that. That they, and it's not just Donald Trump. Even at the time of President Obama, President Obama in 2011 had found, they had found Osama bin Laden in Abbottabad, near a near Pakistani military academy. And yet in February 2016, the Obama administration announced the sale of 18 F-16 aircraft to Pakistan, ostensibly on the ground of counterterrorism. And everybody knows that Pakistan uses F-16 only against India, because they found at that stage that they needed some help from Pakistan against the Taliban. So it's not just one administration. Again, the Bush administration was very close to Pakistan because for supplying their troops in Afghanistan, they needed, the supplies to go through Pakistan.
So we have also seen that President Donald Trump has taken frequent or maybe rather swift, changes in his policy and his approaches. We have seen how he dealt Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in February meeting, and now in August when he met. Completely scenario and things have changed. Do you see President Donald Trump, on the driving seat of U.S. foreign policy right now? Do we have to pass on his term, or he can take another turn and we may see another change in his approach towards India, where we get back to the track?
Well, no, we can't rule out a change because I think both countries value the relationship. Clearly, for India, US is an important partner. But even for the US, and if you saw on Monday, the intersessional meeting of the 2+2 at the official level, which is of the foreign and defense ministries of the two countries, was held. And the US has very few countries with which it has a 2+2 relationship. And similarly for India. So they see that value. And if you saw the briefing that the Indian Foreign Secretary did on Prime Minister's visit to Japan, he referred to the fact that there will be discussions on Quad and how to keep advancing the Quad processes. Functional level cooperation is continuing in different areas despite the current differences. And again, I want to draw your attention to the statement that US Secretary of State Rubio issued when they announced their new ambassador to India. And he said that India is one of the most important countries, partners for the United States. So they recognize that. And so I think there will be an effort, certainly, from both sides to try and come out of this difficult situation.
But Ambassador Singh, in your assessment, we can clearly make out that this is not about tariffs or this is not about the Russian oil purchase. This is something more to do with it, because this is more widespread in terms of a anti-immigrant policy or review of the H-1B visa scheme, especially targeting and making noise about the Indian immigrants or Indians there. Are we being too sensitive here, or this is something which is brewing or something building up in US in terms of Indian interest there, or about India in United States?
No, I wouldn't. I don't think it is India specific. The issue is that it's related to US domestic politics and domestic situation. There is a sense in the US, and we can't wish it away, that those coming on H-1B visas are replacing US workers. Now, true or not, there is that sense, and that argument comes out. It so happens that the largest number of H-1B visas are currently being issued to people of Indian origin. So that dimension is there, but it's not targeting India as such. It's dealing with a domestic political situation that US and US leaders are facing. And one heard this argument even earlier. So, of course, there is an impact on India, but I don't think it's necessarily targeting India.
Okay, but since you mentioned about the domestic politics of the United States, there has been a history of US presidents using these economic tools, right from Abraham Lincoln to Thomas Jefferson, to Henry Clay. Many leaders have used economic policies as tool to build the coffers of United States, and President Donald Trump is no exception. How do you see it? Because we have also seen the history of these misadventures yielding into more economic crisis.
Well, it's for the US to figure out how they want to use the different instruments at their disposal. I think as far as India is concerned, people here would probably looking at what is the impact on India itself. And I think the sense here would be that whatever steps have been taken against India are clearly not justified based on how the facts are on the ground. But we have to see how the markets react to what President Trump has done. So far, there's not sufficient clarity. These are still initial stages. Many economists have argued that there would be a negative impact on the markets, and eventually prices would rise for the US consumer. But so let's see. All these trends have not yet become very clear. But people are watching to see.
So in the last, if I may ask you to do a SWOT analysis of this situation, what is the strength of for India? What is our weakness? What is opportunity there? And what are threats for the trade and the larger aspect of India-US ties here?
So look, we are certainly at the moment in a difficult situation. But I'm confident that there will be an effort from both sides to come out of this situation. As I mentioned to you earlier, for India, US is an important market. It's the largest economy globally. It's the largest consumer market. It's our largest trading partner. We are an overall trade deficit country. With the US, we have a trade surplus. It's a very important technology partner. In civilian technologies, China is imposing restrictions from all reports. It has recalled engineers who have come to India as part of various collaboration projects. Russia has strength in defense technology, but not in civilian technology. So US will remain an essential partner for India. Similarly, the US, even if it tries to normalize the relationship with China, even if it does a trade deal with China, sees that its main economic, technological, and military competition is with China. Now, to deal with that competition, US leaders, US companies, and I've heard that from them, believe that India will be an important partner for them. Just as an example, there are 1,700 global capability centers in India. 60% of them belong to US companies. And they are doing cutting-edge R&D and technology development work for the global operations for multinational companies, not just for the Indian operations. 20% of the global talent in semiconductor design is in India. So for the US also, if it wants to maintain its global leadership in innovation in many areas, India will be a useful partner. So I think it's an important relationship for both. There's a particular difficult moment right now, difficult situation, but I think there will be an effort on both sides to come out of the situation to try and sustain the positive trajectory of the relationship. But I think there'll certainly be an impact, because in India, there will be an argument that given this experience, even as you do more and more with the US, which you must, but given the strength of the US economy, you need to diversify more and hedge even more. So I think that's the kind of balance people will try and work out.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Singh, for joining in this conversation and sharing your perspective. Thank you very much.
Thank you.